Right. The clerk will now proceed to read the orders of the day.
Commonwealth Parliamentary Association and International Committee of the Red Cross Status Bill, not amended in committee, to be considered.
Now.
No amendments on consideration. Third reading what day?
Now.
Dame Maria Villa.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that this bill be read for a third time. This is an important moment for the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association and for the International Committee of the Red Cross. This bill enables the government to recognise both organisations individually and as international organisations, conferring on the legal capacities of a body corporate as well as specific privileges and immunities. And it is an absolute pleasure to bring the bill to its third reading in the House today, completing its scrutiny in this place before it moves forward for similar scrutiny in the other place. It may be halfway through the process, but it feels to me today that this is a significant milestone. And at all stages, I must underline that it has received not only cross-party support, for which I am enormously grateful, but also support from my right honourable and honourable friends on the Treasury bench. And I'd like to thank each and every member for their contributions to the bill throughout its consideration. And I will, Mr. Speaker, just take a couple of minutes to individually point out those that have been particularly supportive of the bill. And my honourable friend, the member for Bridgwater and West Somerset, has to come at the start of this list because it is he who chairs the International Executive Committee of the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association. But also my immense appreciation goes to the Secretary-General of the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association, Mr. Stephen Twigg. His passion and support for the bill, and indeed supporting getting this change in status for the CPA, has been clear all the way through. All of the hardworking and inspirational staff of CPA UK, including our new Chief Executive, Sara Dixon, and Helen Haywood, the Deputy Chief Executive, my thanks go to them and their teams for their unwavering passion and commitment to this Commonwealth Parliamentary Association and continued support, and continued support without whom this would not have been possible. I cannot, of course, forget Mr. John Davis, who was Sarah's predecessor, and I thank him from the bottom of my heart for all his contributions whilst in office. The formidable team at the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, and of course my noble friends, the Lord Ahmed, the Minister responsible for the Commonwealth, and my right honourable friend, the member for Sutton Coldfield, who is not here on the front bench today. He's detained elsewhere, but is ably replaced by my honourable friend, the Minister. Throughout, these ministers have understood the importance of why the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association status needs to change, why this is an important bill, and why the work of the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association is essential to supporting the strengthening of democracy around the world. I thank them all and their teams of officials. And at this stage of proceedings, Mr. Speaker, it is also, I think, important to acknowledge and thank the extraordinary work of the clerks of the House. Their guidance and recognition of the importance of this bill, combined with the support from the government, have helped get the bill where it is today. And in particular, I must mention the clerk that has been particularly helping us, Ms. Anne-Marie Griffiths, and say a huge thank you to her for her assistance and advice at getting the bill to this stage. And I hope, Mr. Speaker, you'll forgive me for thanking you as well, because, of course, you have a very special place in the heart of the CPA and also the Lord Speaker. You are our joint presidents, and in your work, you support us enormously. So I thank you for that. There are, of course, two organisations supported by this bill, and I'd like to thank the International Committee of the Red Cross for their incredibly important work and how they've supported me in the preparation for this bill. I know how much time and consideration their London delegation has put into this, and Yves Lahaye in the ICRC legal team in Geneva has also been heavily involved, and I give my thanks to all of them. The International Committee of the Red Cross, the ICRC's unique international humanitarian mandate and mission has been formally recognised by states in the Geneva Convention and their additional protocols, and in this bill it will be accorded in the UK a status or treatment equivalent to that of an international organisation with the relevant privileges and immunities. To date, over 110 states have accorded the ICRC these relevant privileges and immunities, including all other permanent members of the United Nations Security Council. The content of this bill and the conferral of relevant privileges and immunity to the ICRC in the UK is critical to enabling it to continue to operate in the UK in accordance with its international mandate, maintaining its strict adherence to the principles of neutrality, impartiality and independence, and its working method of confidentiality. Getting to this point has, Mr. Speaker, been described as a labour of love, because for almost, in fact, more than 2 years now, the work that has gone into getting to this stage has been intense, and none of it could have been accomplished without the esteemed individuals and organisations that I've mentioned above. The perseverance from everyone is starting to be rewarded now, but there is much more to do. And I welcome the fact that this bill and the amendments debated and agreed in committee have received cross-party support again, demonstrating the high regard and esteem both the CPA and ICRC are held, not only here in this place, but throughout the country and internationally, with members of a number of overseas parliaments particularly reiterating how important this bill is. We have listened and learned and gone forward with this historic legislation, and which is now well on its way to putting in place such a fundamental change. This bill is integral to both organisations as it provides the necessary powers for the CPA and ICRC to be treated in a manner comparable with an international organisation, of which the United Kingdom or His Majesty's Government in the United Kingdom is a member. Now, each organisation has its own role and constitutional arrangements, and this had to be reflected in the bill, and it is. There are within the bill clauses whereby we can use secondary legislation to put in place particularly the privileges and immunities which each organisation will need. Now, the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association element of the bill will be widely and warmly welcomed by our fellow parliamentarians throughout the Commonwealth. And I recall in my recent visit to Kenya, the Speaker of that Parliament reminding me how vitally important it is to the African region of the CPA to achieve this new status for the organisation. Parliamentarians from Africa have long championed the need for this legislation and made the point that they want to continue to be part of the CPA because of the important work that it does, but they increasingly struggle to justify spending their taxpayers' money with the CPA configured as a UK charity, a status that I believe we have long outgrown. Concerns about the CPA status date back more than 3 decades. If it can now be resolved, I believe this will serve to strengthen and renew the CPA's mission, its unity, and indeed its sense of purpose. I attended the Commonwealth Parliamentary Conference in Ghana last October and saw once again the strength of feeling across the CPA membership about the status of our organisation. Mr. Speaker, hosted speakers and presiding officers from the Commonwealth here in London last month for Commonwealth Day, where you ensured that they were briefed about the progress that we're making on this bill. The response was extremely warm and positive, a collective sigh of relief that this issue might be reaching a solution. But I'm mindful that the bill will pass through the other place if it is to become an act. So can I say once again that without this legislation, there is a very strong possibility that the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association would relocate its headquarters outside of the UK. By enacting this bill, the UK can not only keep the CPA here, but also demonstrate our commitment to the Commonwealth itself, in this its 75th anniversary year. Now, I am delighted that at committee stage key amendments were passed to update the bill, the first of which recognises the unique and sensitive role of the ICRC, including visiting prisoners all around the world, to help ensure their safety. It allows for protected ICRC information to be exempt from disclosure requirements imposed by an order of court or tribunal proceedings other than criminal proceedings. So the amendment is designed to protect information that the ICRC provides in confidence to His Majesty's Government from being used in UK civil proceedings. That is necessary, as the withholding from public disclosure of confidential information cannot otherwise be assured. And that reflects the ICRC's standard working method of confidentiality, which is designed to protect not only its staff, but also its operations in active conflict zones. That principle also underpins the ICRC's ability to operate in dangerous locations on sensitive issues, engaging with both state and non-state actors. Disclosure of confidential ICRC information could damage the ICRC's ability to perform its sensitive functions when negotiating with conflict parties, and it could put its staff and operations at risk. ICRC information being used in legal proceedings is a very real risk and concern for them. Over the past 15 years, the ICRC's confidentiality has been challenged some 20 times in the UK. I would also like to touch on my probing amendment debated in committee around the involvement of individuals in the drawing up of secondary legislation. I didn't press this to a vote, and I thank the Minister who took committee for their response, because it was extremely reassuring. The amendment sought to lay down a formal requirement on the Secretary of State or the Foreign Secretary to consult the Chair of the UK branch and Secretary-General of the CPA and the President and Director-General of the ICRC, respectively, before finalising secondary legislation. The Minister was able to confirm that the FCDO will consult all of those parties ahead of secondary legislation being laid before the House, and will work closely with them to agree arrangements for the appropriate privileges and immunities for each organisation separately. This ensures that the bill works exactly in the way the relevant organisations need it to, and assures that the right individuals are consulted before secondary legislation is laid before the House and implemented. This bill demonstrates that this House of Commons values the Commonwealth, values the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association work, and respects the importance of the ICRC, and respects that these organisations need to be recognised as international organisations. Can I thank colleagues for their support, and can I wish my bill well as it continues its journey to the other place, taken forward very ably by my noble friend, the Baroness de Souza. Thank you.
The question is that the bill now be read a third time. And can I just say thank you to Dame Maria Miller for all what she's done, ensuring a solid future of the CPA. It is much welcomed by all sides of this House and appreciated. Chris Elmore.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. I don't intend to detain the House for very long. But can I start, Mr Speaker, in paying a warm tribute to the Right Honourable Lady opposite, who has, it must be said, since becoming chair of the CPA UK branch, spearheaded, forced this issue in the most strongest possible terms with ministers, including with 2 foreign secretaries, I think, maybe 3, I can't quite remember, but she really has been at the forefront of this work. And one of the key reasons why this work has been so important, and the Honourable Lady has obviously spoken at length of this, as have you, Mr Speaker, in your remarks then, is that this sends a message to the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association that the UK Government, and indeed this Parliament, is listening to what those member states are telling us. And I'm privileged to serve as one of 3 representatives from the British Islands and Mediterranean region reps on the International Committee of the CPA. And there have been some very difficult conversations over the last 2 years while I've served on that body, including, and this is not some sort of travel guide for myself, Mr Speaker, but it does come up frequently when you're travelling with the CPA, but in Gibraltar, in Canada and in Ghana at our last CPA conference last year, where myself and the force that is the Honourable Gentleman for Bridgewater were quite rightly cross-examined by nearly all member states of the CPA International about when this bill will move forward. And I am delighted and slightly relieved that the various commitments that the Honourable Gentleman, the Right Honourable Lady and I have been giving to that body for the last 2 years are now at least at the halfway mark. And in that context, just 2.5 years ago, we felt like we were nowhere. So actually, the speed in which these last few months have gone have been wonderfully refreshing. And I do pay tribute to the previous Foreign Secretary and the current Foreign Secretary and the Minister in the Lords for the fact that they have genuinely engaged in this process. And one of the key elements for me has been that my own front bench and the government are able to work cross-party on something that is about setting a standard, supporting the Commonwealth family and listening to the Commonwealth family of nations. Really, Mr Speaker, this bill is about setting CPA and the international body of the Red Cross onto an equal footing with many, many other international organisations. We are, in essence, I think, Mr Speaker, simply catching up. But nevertheless, that is so crucial to how we as a Parliament and the UK Government and the official opposition work with Commonwealth nations. And actually, when doing these cross-examinations, I'll put it like that, from member states, the key theme all the way through has been that they would like the CPA International to remain in the UK. There has been no animosity about it remaining in London, but what they wanted was this status issue resolved. And in fact, many member states, and I recall an excellent conversation with an Australian delegation here, talking about how could they help? How could they work with the government to try and make sure that it was made very clear that member states across the world wanted CPA International to remain in the UK? So I think this is a warmly welcomed bill. I think it's something that sends the right message, and I do think that genuinely is very important, and that now when we head to Sydney later this year for CPA International, we're able to say, all being well in the other place, of course, and I look forward to the Minister's remarks as well, that we have delivered. And I do think that genuinely is important. And I just finally say, Mr Speaker, as the Right Honourable Lady, I do pay tribute to you because I feel that you have personally moved mountains in a lot of this work, and it has been truly welcomed and valued by all of us on CPA UK. And I know by the CPA staff as well, both internationally and in the UK, and I always warmly welcome your support in this.
Sara Britcliffe.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. And can I thank the Honourable Member for his speech, but also thank you, Mr Speaker, for the work that you've done to secure this, and congratulate my Right Honourable friend, the Member for Basingstoke, in bringing forward this important bill. I welcome the support it's received from all sides of the House, and I'm pleased to be able to offer my own support today. The bill is quite technical in its nature. It makes provisions for 2 specific organisations to be granted international status that, owing to their unique constitutions, could not be included under the existing legislation. However, the wording of the legislation should not distract us from the organisations cited in it. Moreover, we should not overlook the primary purposes of these organisations: strengthening parliamentary democracy and providing humanitarian assistance. In a world where we frequently witness the devastation caused by violence and war and the growing threats to democracy, the importance of these causes nor the organisations which pursue them cannot be understated. So I therefore welcome this bill granting international organisation status to both the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association and the International Committee of the Red Cross. This new status will ensure that these organisations can continue to perform their vital work fully and without restriction. Starting with the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association. As an organisation, it seeks to promote the values of parliamentary democracy and good governance. They facilitate dialogues between parliaments and draw on our collective knowledge to improve our procedures and address the wide-ranging challenges we as parliamentarians may face. Their efforts have included the development of the recommended benchmarks for legislators and a code of conduct for members. They've also provided guidance on specific and pertinent issues such as improving mental health provisions, the challenges of climate change and the growth of AI. And I welcome the Government's unwavering support for the Commonwealth and its ideals. Article 1 of the Commonwealth Constitution outlines our responsibility for upholding and promoting democratic cultures and practices. Given this, I would therefore ask what support the Government and Parliament has provided through to the CPA and to strengthen democracy across the Commonwealth. Turning to the International Committee of the Red Cross, its fundamental mission is to protect the victims of conflict and violence through the provision of humanitarian assistance. Their work, often in the most difficult and perilous environments, encompasses everything from mine clearance, providing healthcare and sanitation, to combating sexual violence, improving respect for international humanitarian law and establishing economic stability. I'm very proud of the United Kingdom's record in providing humanitarian aid across the world to Afghanistan, South Sudan, Ukraine and right now to Gaza. However, I again ask what support has the Government provided to the ICRC and what can we as Members of Parliament do to support the Red Cross? Ultimately, if we are to grant international status to these two organisations, let us also ensure that we fully support them in their operations and in their aims, strengthening democracy and humanitarian aid. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yeah. Sorry, Shadow Minister's coming in at the end. No, that's great. Jack Brereton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to commend my right honourable friend for Basingstoke on progressing this important bill, which will recognise both the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association and the International Committee of the Red Cross as an international organisation. These are important changes, given neither are currently recognised as international organisations under current UK laws. Current laws cannot apply, as neither is an intergovernmental organisation, so a new enabling power is necessary. The CPA does vital work in promoting parliamentary democracy throughout the Commonwealth, but I know the current setup as a UK charity is a cause of concern amongst some members and does somewhat restrict the CPA, which this bill seeks to address. The Commonwealth is a unique club of nations united by our shared historical and economic ties, alongside a shared belief in the value of democracy and the rule of law. In an increasingly hostile world where the rule of ruthless autocrats is on the rise and democratic rights are under threat, the advancement of these basic values and supporting parliamentary democracy to flourish throughout the Commonwealth remains as important now as when the CPA was first founded in 1911. That is why this bill is so important to ensure the CPA remains relevant and best placed to promote parliamentary democracy throughout the Commonwealth today. This will allow the CPA to participate more fully internationally than it does today, removing some of the restrictions which currently exist. There are over 60 countries and jurisdictions participating in the CPA and more than 180 legislators. It is helping to increase participation of underrepresented groups in Commonwealth parliaments, including more women, disabled people and young people. The organisation also does vital work in helping develop shared learning throughout parliamentary democracies across the Commonwealth, facilitating knowledge sharing and helping strengthen our democratic systems. The second organisation this bill focuses on, the International Committee of the Red Cross, does hugely important humanitarian work, protecting the victims of conflict and violence around the world. This week we have seen the announcement by the Prime Minister of the Government's commitment to increase spending on defence to 2.5%, which is incredibly welcome, and particularly that it will be funded through much-needed efficiency savings in Whitehall rather than tax rises. But what this reflects is the increasing threats we face from our adversaries globally in an increasingly insecure world. The work of the International Red Cross and Red Crescent movement is more important than ever. We have seen conflicts igniting around the world, whether following Putin's illegal invasion of Ukraine or the horrific turmoil in the Middle East, in Gaza and Israel. In addition to Ukraine and Israel and the occupied Palestinian territories, the ICRC also has key operations in Afghanistan, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Ethiopia, Sahel, Sudan, Syria and Yemen. Throughout all conflicts like this, we see innocent civilians caught up in the violence and harmed by the results of war. This is why this bill today is so essential. Alongside the CPA, this bill also seeks to properly recognise the ICRC as an international organisation. Under international law, through the Geneva Convention, the ICRC already has specific and unique humanitarian mandate to act during times of international conflict and is given wider recognition internationally with the rights of a humanitarian initiative. More than 110 states around the world have already recognised the ICRC with equivalent status to an international organisation, so I think it only right that the UK follows suit. This is particularly important in allowing the ICRC to operate in the UK whilst preserving its core principles around neutrality and independence. A number of amendments were agreed to at committee stage, which I think further improve the quality of this bill, particularly those amendments accepted focused around the importance of confidentiality for certain information provided by the ICRC to the government and also information provided by the ICRC during legal proceedings. As my right honourable friend said, confidentiality is critical and remains a fundamental principle of the ICRC. I think these changes are eminently sensible, given the sensitivities of the information that will often be dealt with in these circumstances. This is particularly important in protecting victims during conflict and helping bring justice through criminal prosecution of those who commit such crimes. I want to again congratulate my right honourable friend and thank her for bringing forwards this bill today, and I wish it well on its continued passage through the other place.
Nickie Aiken.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Speaker, sorry. I'm delighted that you are our Speaker, and long may you reign. Mr. Speaker, it is a privilege to speak in favour of my right honourable friend for Basingstoke and her bill today, the Commonwealth, Parliamentary Association and International Committee of the Red Cross Status Bill. And I want to first start by paying huge tribute to my honourable friend for Basingstoke, who has been the flag bearer for the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association for the whole time I've been in this house in the last 4.5 years. And one of the first conversations we ever had was about the CPA and how important it was, particularly for a new member of Parliament, to be part of the CPA, and I took her at her word, and I've been delighted to be involved in the brilliant association.
Well, my honourable friend give way on that point. I thank my honourable friend for giving way, but can we also pay tribute to the honourable member for Basingstoke as well for the work that she has done with new parliamentarians when we came in, and specifically in promoting women in this Parliament and trying to reach the 50-50 status. So it's not just the work that she's done here today for the CPA, but also the work that she's done for women in this place.
I thank my honourable friend for her intervention, and absolutely, I think, and I want to spare her blushes, but the right honourable member for Basingstoke is an absolute brilliant parliamentarian, but also the fact that she does support newer members of Parliament, and I, as I said, I have been beneficial of that advice. Mr. Speaker, I have been a supporter of the incredible work of the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association for many years, and I know this bill will cement the difference that the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association has made across our beloved Commonwealth over the past 76 years. And I will also welcome the bill due to the fact that it recognises the work that the International Committee of the Red Cross does to support those regions in crisis. From Australia to Anguilla and Botswana to the British Virgin Islands, the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association is crucial in keeping all of us parliamentarians connected across the globe, sharing good practice, helping us learn from each other, and fostering friendly, positive and long-lasting friendships across the 180 parliaments and legislatures that make up the family that is the Commonwealth.
Oh, my honourable friend, give way.
Oh.
Can I thank my honourable friend for giving way? And as she was making her remarks about how we learn from other parliaments, Mr Speaker, it made me remember sitting in the New Zealand Parliament for questions one morning, where the Speaker took an interesting role that when the Minister answered a question that was asked, if the Speaker wasn't that satisfied with the answer, he asked for it to be answered again. And I just wondered whether my honourable friend thought that that might be something we should consider here as well.
Nickie Aiken.
Well, I have to say that the Right Honourable Member for Basingstoke makes a very, very good point. And I'm sure the front bench would be delighted to comment on that in their speeches. Mr Speaker, the International Committee of the Red Cross is an essential partner for achieving the three core objectives of the United Kingdom's humanitarian framework, which are prioritise humanitarian assistance to people in greatest need and provide them with what they need the most to recover from a crisis. Protect the people most at risk, including from conflict-related sexual violence and barriers to humanitarian assistance. Prevent and anticipate future shocks and build resilience in long-running crises by tackling the underlying drivers of crises, instability and extreme food insecurity. Nobody, I don't think, could ever argue with any of that. The International Committee of the Red Cross is much respected in this country, but also abroad, and carries with it an unparalleled ability to engage with all parties involved in a conflict and supports innocent civilians caught up in the crossfire. Mr Speaker, the amendments brought forward by my friend, the Right Honourable Member for Basingstoke, at committee stage are crucial to the successful operation of the International Committee of the Red Cross. Amendments 1 and 2 are designed to protect information that the International Committee of the Red Cross provides in confidence to the government from being used in UK civil court proceedings. The International Committee of the Red Cross information being used in legal proceedings is a very real risk and concern. I was surprised, Mr Speaker, to learn that in the past 15 years, the International Committee of the Red Cross confidentiality has been challenged some 20 times in the United Kingdom. Whether this is to disclose information regarding its work with British forces abroad, or its dialogue with a variety of actors on the global stage. Mr Speaker, today I will be focusing on my comments on the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association, as I have been fortunate to work closely with this organisation in my time in this place.
If my honourable friend, before she leaves the subject of the ICRC, and she gives me the opportunity to just yet again underline the importance of the amendments that were brought in at committee, she reiterated the number of times that the ICRC have been threatened with having to divulge very confidential information. Does she agree with me that this is something which I hope, when this bill goes to the other place, that they take into consideration? Because whilst It is obviously an important step to provide that confidentiality and not the need to divulge that information except in criminal cases. Does she agree with me that we need to make sure that those provisions are in place for civil cases as soon as possible, and that I hope that there will be no debate in the House of Lords, the other place, that might delay that coming into effect?
I thank my right honourable friend for her intervention, and I think she makes an absolute very, very serious point. If organisations like the International Committee of the Red Cross are to succeed in their objectives, they have got to be trusted in the regions and in the countries that they serve, and therefore, they do have to deal with people that we may not wish to deal with ourselves, and to bring conflicts to an end, or even to safeguard civilians' lives and prevent sexual violence in conflict. So absolutely, I think I would hope that in the other place, who do tend to be very, very clear on scrutinising the bills, but I would hope that they will see her point and accept those amendments and not change them. Mr. Speaker, as I said, I would like to now move on and concentrate my words on the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association because of the work that I have been delighted to undertake with this brilliant organisation. As a one-term MP, and I can confirm I will be a one-term MP standing down at the next election, but the MP for the cities of London and Westminster at this point, I have been very proud to support the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association. In fact, only this week, I was honoured to speak to a delegation from the Malaysian Parliament, including His Excellency Johari Abdul, Speaker of the House of Representatives, as well as members of the House of Representatives Special Select Committees and several parliamentary officials. It was fascinating, as usual, to learn how similar our Parliament procedures are, from timetabling, which our model is very much mirrors theirs, barring the Malaysian Parliamentary's provision, and you may be interested to learn this, Mr. Speaker, there is a provision in the Parliament's procedures for the head of state to make a statement every morning. That may be quite an interesting practice introduced in the Commons. I'm not sure whether His Majesty would like to come every day to make a speech. I personally would...
Also, he's not allowed into the House of Commons.
Oh yes, I had forgotten that small point of an issue. Well, maybe we'll just move on from there. Anyway, to the Malaysian's version of the Procedure Committee, I am very proud to sit on the UK's Procedure Committee, which is called the Standing Orders Committee. And I was asked to speak to the Malaysian delegation about the procedures of the House of Commons, how business is tabled, standing orders, and my experience on the Procedure Committee. And, Mr. Speaker, what a week to be discussing such the procedures of Parliament. It was fortunate I was able to use a certain bill, well, perhaps an act now, the Miranda Bill, which we saw this week with its extended ping-pong to demonstrate how the UK Parliament works in practice.
Thank my honourable friend for giving way. And does she also recognise that the work that she does on the Procedure Committee helps shape this Parliament, but also having people come and visit Parliament and see the procedures? Because when we talk about the life of an MP, when we go to local schools, they always ask us, what's a typical day in Parliament? And it's so difficult to be able to explain that because there is no typical day in Parliament. Some days we can finish at 5 o'clock, some days we can be sat here at midnight. So it's so important, the work that we do, to teach others about the way that this Parliament works and about our job on a day-to-day basis.
I thank the honourable member for her intervention. She's absolutely right, and I think it was fascinating this week for the Malaysian delegation to sit in on DPM queues this week and to see, and it was quite a raucous episode, I think, this week, particularly with the first question. And so I think I didn't see them afterwards, but I would have been interested to hear their views on our procedures in this place for DPMQs. Mr. Speaker, in 2022, I was also delighted to address delegates from the Isle of Man when I represented the CPA UK in this place. They came to discuss, and I was able to discuss my experiences of managing parliamentary responsibilities, including committee work, attendance in the chamber, constituency work and personal commitments. And it goes back to what the intervention my honourable friend just made now, that there is never a typical day in the life of an MP. You can come into this place with your meetings for the day in your diary, and then all of a sudden there is an UQ or a statement that you want to be part of, and your diary is then it's completely changed the day. So it's fascinating. This is such a fascinating job to do, and I'm sure it is the same from the conversations I've had with parliamentarians across the globe, that there is never usually a one-size-fits-all Parliament procedures. But, Mr. Speaker, I personally find meeting these delegations, whether it's in this country or abroad, so enlightening. And I do encourage all members of the House to work with the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association to meet, learn and share insights with other parliamentarians from across the Commonwealth. And although there are people, there will be many MPs who will not be coming back to this place because of retirement or whatever, any candidate who is, of course.
Giving way, just on the point around members' engagement, she will know that I'm privileged to be Treasurer of the CPA branch, the Honourable Lady is the Chair, and we spend a lot of time trying to encourage longer serving but also newer members to not be afraid of the CPA and to come and take part in inward delegations, and ideally then to engage in our work abroad. And I hope that what comes from today's bill is that it highlights again a debate on the floor of the House about the successful work that she is cantering through of the CPA, that hopefully means members now and members after a general election will be encouraged to work with, and I'm sure she'd agree with me on that point.
I absolutely do agree with the honourable member, and I do think it's very important that any candidate who is seeking to become a parliamentarian and is successful whenever the general election may be, that they do get involved in the CPA once they arrive here, because I think it's very, as the member said, I think it's an absolutely enlightening experience, and it really does also help yourself as a parliamentarian and maybe learning from others, not just in the United Kingdom but across the globe.
Well, my honourable friend,
of course.
My honourable friend for giving way, and it does feel like we've been here for a lifetime, but actually as new parliamentarians, when we entered, one of the fears of engaging with the likes of the CPA is actually the reflection that the public might see on the travel, etc. So it's really important for us to be able to highlight in this chamber how important it is for us as parliamentarians to be able to witness how it works in other parts of the world. So it's important that through these debates, does she agree with me, that it's important that through these debates we continue to highlight the importance of the CPA, so that it isn't through fear that members don't engage with the likes of the CPA?
I thank my honourable friend for her intervention, and I completely agree. I think that although this is the mother of all parliaments, it has been here for, thousands of years or more, that we really should be able to learn from others. Sorry.
Can I thank my honourable friend for giving way there? And I think my other honourable friend who was making an intervention earlier, it is right to point out the need for us to explain the benefit of the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association, because much of our day-to-day work as members of Parliament is very connected to the grassroots of what we do in our constituencies. But the role of a parliamentarian is so much greater than that, and I'll give the Honourable Lady an example. She was talking about her meetings with the Malaysian Parliament earlier this week, and I had the great pleasure of meeting the Honourable Rodia Binti Spacey, who's a Member of Parliament in the Malaysian Parliament, and indeed is a new regional representative for the Commonwealth Women Parliamentarians, an organisation we haven't really touched upon much in this debate so far. But Commonwealth Women Parliamentarians is there to support elected members, very much in the way that my honourable friend who spoke earlier is talking about, supporting new members to be able to do their jobs as well as they can and hopefully retaining them in Parliament for longer. But my conversation with the Honourable Rodia was that in the Malaysian Parliament, they have 28 female members of Parliament, just 13.5% of their parliamentarians, and we discussed ways of trying to increase women parliamentarians. Does she agree with me that that is one of the things that we can learn from each other in our parliaments throughout the Commonwealth, because we have such similar setups?
See, I'm being very generous in allowing the scope to be broadened somewhat. I now look forward to more from Nickie Aiken.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I have to say I absolutely agree with my right honourable friend for Basingstoke on the point she made about women supporting women. I think that we do very much a great job on that in this Parliament, and I'm delighted to be part of her Women in Parliament APPG, which is a cross-party obviously APPG, and we have to have strength in numbers, and we have to encourage more women to stand, whether it's in CPA countries or our own, because we have to hear women's voices in politics. I always say we are, in this country, of course.
In addition to the comments that honourable and right honourable members have made, would my honourable friend agree that it's not just women, it's also, and I do consider myself a relatively young person, that it's also about encouraging more young people as well into parliamentary democracies across the Commonwealth?
I thank my honourable friend for his point, and absolutely, I personally believe that the CPA can be a force for good, for sharing good practice in encouraging people from all walks of life to enter politics. I'm about to go on to talk about my experience in Grenada with the CPA, but where there was many young people who had been elected for the first time, and it strengthens all democracies if it represents the people that they are there to serve.
Of course. I thank my honourable friend for giving way, and as the youngest on our bench is not 30 yet, thankfully. Could she please explain in Grenada, where she's visited, how they managed to get young people to their parliaments, but also make sure that they feel that they can stay in the job? Because one of the problems that young people now face, and I think every member of Parliament faces, is the rise in abuse through social media, which can very much put people off entering this place. And people do enter this place to do good things for their constituents, and that's not always reflected through our media, through social media. So how are they tackling that in other parliaments across the Commonwealth?
Can I just say, this is about the movement and the transfer of the CPA. I've got to be a little bit careful, because other people will also want to stretch bills when we don't want them stretched. So as important as this is, and the House is very supportive, we've got to ensure that we do stick within the terms. Nickie Aiken.
I will just reiterate that I do support exactly what my honourable friend has just made, because it's so important that we ensure that the CPA is a force for good. Mr. Speaker, in the cities of London and Westminster, the Commonwealth is right at home. We are fortunate to host the international headquarters of the Commonwealth Secretariat and the Commonwealth Foundation in Marlborough House. And of course, the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association for the United Kingdom operates from here, and the mother of all parliaments. Honourable Frank, of course.
I think my honourable friend's very right to bring up the importance of the location of the International Secretariat to be here, right in the heart of Westminster, and that's enabled us to work with the International Secretariat as CPA UK, as the UK Parliament, particularly around events like International Women's Day, where we worked with them actually to deal with the very issue that my honourable friend was raising about online abuse. And set up, as we can now, of course, with the advent of the widespread use of Teams and other such online facilities for meeting, online training for women parliamentarians across the Commonwealth. Does she agree with me that that is just one example of how we can work as a team with the CPA, but also having them so close to us here in Parliament, we can effectively help support their works in this way?
I thank my right friend for her intervention, and I absolutely agree, and I think that goes to the heart of this bill, Mr. Speaker, the status of the CPA. If we can consolidate the status of the CPA, we are just across the road from the Foreign Office. It is about all working together for the soft power element that that this government is very much focused on. Mr. Speaker, the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association, as many here will know, works tirelessly to promote parliamentary democracy and good governance. It is completely non-partisan, and I have thoroughly enjoyed meeting with and getting to know parliamentarians from a wide range of countries and political parties. Back in March last year, I was fortunate enough to be invited to be a member of the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association UK delegation to the stunning island of Grenada in the Caribbean. On this trip, I was honoured to meet with the Prime Minister, Dickon Mitchell. This was my first trip for the CPA, and what a fascinating one it was. And I can tell you that it was. I have to pay tribute at this point to the CPA officer Martin Vickers, who was outstanding on that trip. And I know that the clerk in his seat will always remember that trip because he was on it, and it was my first example of the CPA in action. Grenada had the same government and Prime Minister for 22 of the past 27 years. And in the 2022 elections, Dickon Mitchell defeated incumbent Keith Mitchell, who was seeking his 6th term. And I do wonder whether there's ever been a precedence where a Prime Minister with the same name has succeeded a former Prime Minister with the same surname, Mitchell. The incumbent New National Party previously had all 15 seats in the Grenadian Parliament. But after the 2022 elections, they were suddenly in opposition as Dickon Mitchell's National Democratic Congress took 9 of the available seats. This election brought about certain new challenges for the Parliament of Grenada, such as how to govern for the National Democratic Congress, who had no experience of how to be, and also for the new National Party, who had never faced opposition for decades. And it goes back to the point that my honourable friend for Stoke was saying earlier about having new parliamentarians, young parliamentarians. This was a situation where the National Democratic Congress, all of their MPs elected, had never been elected before. They'd never really been in politics before. The Prime Minister, Dickon Mitchell, had been a working solicitor. So fascinating for the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association UK being invited over to undertake a series of workshops on how to be scrutinised, and equally importantly, how to scrutinise. I was joined on the trip by the Honourable Member for Bristol East and the Honourable Member for East Kilbride, Strathaven and Les Manago, who was a member of the Scottish National Party at the time, but who has since defected, Mr. Speaker, to the Conservative Party, and I wouldn't want to wish to take any credit for persuading her that she was a Conservative on the trip. But in Grenada, Mr. Speaker, I also worked very closely with the Speaker of the House of Representatives of Grenada, Leo Cato, and Decima Williams, the President of the Senate of Grenada. And it goes back to the point of how important this bill is to secure the status of the CPA, because Decima Williams is a former communist who was very much part of the revolution in Grenada in the early 80s, and we bonded so incredibly well, two women politicians from completely the different sides of the political divide. And she and Miss Williams made the comment to me as I left, who only the CPA could bring a communist and a conservative together. And I think that really is a clear example of how parliamentarians, whatever their political persuasions, can put their political parties aside and work together for the greater good. It is the extraordinary power that the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association provides. And also during my trip, I met with women's rights campaigners, those working to improve disability rights and services, and so importantly, the youth parliament and climate change campaigners. And it goes back to what my honourable friend for Stoke was saying earlier. We met the youth parliament. They were outstanding young people who really wanted to make a difference to their country. And it was fascinating for me as a women's rights campaigner myself to talk to women campaigners who were working very hard to tackle violence against women and girls. Our trip, Madam Deputy Speaker, coincided with International Women's Day, and I was privileged to be invited to make a speech at the Prime Minister's event to over 100 Grenadian schoolgirls, but I did not expect it to be aired live on Grenadian TV. It was an experience for me. I was then delighted to welcome Speaker Cato and President of the Senate Williams to my own constituency only a few weeks ago during the 75th anniversary of the Commonwealth of Nations celebrations, which was presided by Mr. Speaker himself. My brilliant constituency team thoroughly enjoyed discussing with them day-to-day work of an MP office and heard how this differed in some ways, but also mirrored their experiences in other ways. And we were also joined by Chantal Dion, who is a member of the Legislative Assembly of Alberta in Canada. Again, clear example of how the CPA brings parliamentarians from across the country together. Of course.
And can I thank my honourable friend for giving way, and she's talking very eloquently and with a great deal of passion about her visit to Grenada, and this is just one of a number of different delegations that CPA UK send out thanks to the support of both this place and also the other place financially, to make sure that members of Parliament are able to do the sorts of workshops, the sorts of work and the sort of relationship development that she talked about. Would she agree with me that it's very important for Parliament to continue to reiterate its support for CPA UK, given the amount of good store that members of Parliament put into, feel very strongly about the work of the CPA, and that this is a real priority for parliamentarians and therefore needs to continue to be a financial priority for Parliament?
I thank my right honourable friend for her intervention, and I completely agree, and that's why I am fully supportive of the objectives of this bill that we are debating today. And I agree I actually agreed with the honourable member for Bath, who during committee stage stated that this bill creates equal partners in the Commonwealth, rather than the much outdated model where the UK takes the leadership. This bill provides the necessary delegated legislation-making powers for the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association and the International Committee of the Red Cross to be treated in a manner comparable to an international organisation of which the UK is a member. But prior to this bill, because of the powers under the International Development Act 2002 and the International Organisation Act 1968, which is even older than I am, the government has not been able to treat the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association or the International Committee of the Red Cross as an international organisation they are party to. That is because neither of the two organisations is an intergovernmental organisation, but instead each has its own unique constitutional arrangements reflecting its specific international priorities. Therefore, Madam Deputy Speaker, it is absolutely necessary to establish special enabling powers to allow the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association and the International Committee of the Red Cross to operate in the United Kingdom. It is also welcome that this bill is supported by parties from across the House. This bill will provide the International Committee of the Red Cross with more protections for its work, and the bill will ensure the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association can continue to strengthen democracy and encourage cross-party work. I look forward to supporting the passage of this bill, and I once again congratulate my right honourable friend, the member for Basingstoke, on her outstanding work to get us where we are today.
Thank you. Shadow Minister Anna McMorrin.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And I would like to begin today by paying tribute to the honourable member for Basingstoke, whose dedication and commitment to this matter has been a labour of love over the past 2 years, and it's the reason that we are all here today. I'd also like to pay tribute to my honourable friend, the member for Ogmore, whose work on the CPA, both here in the UK and internationally, has been critical in helping us get to where we are now. Also, to thank the members for Hyde, for Stoke-on-Trent, and for the member for Cities of London and Westminster for their support and their eloquent speeches on the bill here today. The CPA is a highly valued organisation, with many of us across the House having benefited from their work and will continue to do so for years to come. So I'm pleased, on behalf of the opposition, to be supporting this bill here today. This bill couldn't be better timed, Madam Deputy Speaker, as we recently celebrated the 75-year anniversary of the Commonwealth earlier this month, with a two-day conference right here in Westminster, hosted by Mr. Speaker, and can I thank him for his work in hosting that and pulling the matter together, and also his work in ensuring that these issues remain prominent. The Commonwealth has grown from a group of 8 countries in 1949 to a diverse body of 56 nations and a population of 2.5 billion today. Its members range from large developed countries to emerging and developing countries, even including some of the smallest nations on earth. Just recently, I was fortunate enough to travel with a CPA delegation to Belize, and it was great to be there as part of my shadow brief in the shadow FCDO team, meeting members of their parliament, understanding how their parliament works, meeting with officials, committee members and their government and their speaker. It allowed us to build those critical relationships and build an understanding of the challenges the country faces. And we've heard from other members across the House. These relationships are crucial right across the Commonwealth. And I think we should all, well, we do all agree that today we should celebrate the Commonwealth for the modern institution it is, one we can be proud of. And I also want to put on record that Labour is keen to ensure that the CPA headquarters stays right here in Westminster, in London, as the bill intends it. Labour is very proud of the CPA's ongoing role in bringing together and liaising between the Parliaments and the Commonwealth family, from the very building that inspired the way in which most of the Commonwealth is governed today. It is important that the CPA is granted similar privileges and immunities to those enjoyed by comparable organisations, like the Commonwealth Foundation and the Commonwealth of Learning. This will strengthen the influence of Commonwealth parliamentarians and provide the CPA with a more authoritative presence internationally. Parliaments and parliamentarians across the Commonwealth, I know, will welcome this enhanced status. It will positively impact the wider Commonwealth and help maintain unity and stability in times when international order, parliamentary democracy and human rights face huge and serious challenges. I'll give way.
And she's touched upon the importance of the privileges and immunities that are afforded by this bill, not only to the CPA but also to the ICRC. Does she agree with me, and does she agree that it is important that the government has given undertakings that those immunities, when they are set out in secondary legislation, are discussed prior to that in detail with the necessary parties within both organisations to ensure that this bill works in the way that it's intended?
I thank the honourable member for her intervention, and I absolutely agree with what she's setting out, and I go on to ask that of the government, but thank you for pointing that out. I'm pleased that this bill seeks to grant the CPA with a bespoke legal status like that enjoyed by the Interparliamentary Union in Swiss law and the Assemblée parlementaire de la Francophonie, our French equivalents, in French law. Holding a legal status akin to our parliamentary strengthening counterparts should enhance the organisation's standing. And if the CPA is not granted this legal status, there is a real risk of interparliamentary division and fragmentation, which could also have broader ramifications on the unity of the Commonwealth. So moving on to the International Committee of the Red Cross aspects of this bill. The ICRC is a neutral, independent and impartial humanitarian organisation mandated by the international community to protect and assist victims of armed conflict and other situations of violence. The ICRC has been granted privileges and immunities by 109 states. The UK is not one of them. That absence has resulted in significant operational challenges, and the granting of privileges and immunities has become a matter of urgency. Obtaining privileges and immunities in the UK would facilitate the ICRC's operational capacity to fulfil its mandate and manage its resources in a manner most beneficial to all those affected and impacted people. It would also protect the ICRC's ability to act as and to be perceived as a neutral, independent and impartial humanitarian actor, and protect the confidential nature of the ICRC's work. So it's essential that the ICRC remains neutral, remains independent, as it is only through the strict adherence to these principles that the ICRC can obtain the trust of parties to and victims of armed conflicts and actors in other situations of violence. This trust is crucial in securing humanitarian access in some of the most contested conflict zones. This bill goes a long way in addressing the above, providing the means for the ICRC to obtain only the privileges and immunities strictly necessary for its functioning. This includes immunity from legal processes for the ICRC and its staff, inviolability of its property, and the protection of confidential ICRC information held by the UK government from disclosure in legal proceedings. So can I ask the Minister today to reaffirm his assurances at committee stage that this secondary legislation required would be brought forward as soon as possible? And will he commit to consulting with both the ICRC and CPA ahead of this legislation to ensure the appropriate privileges and immunities for each organisation? On behalf of the opposition, I am pleased to support this bill here today. and commend the work right across the House, but particularly from the Honourable Member for Basingstoke, that has gone into this bill. And if we fail to get this right, it will deal a real blow to the role of this House and of the government on the world stage. It will be seen as a symbol of our lack of commitment and damage the potential of this growing and unique global organisation, just at a time when we should be redoubling our efforts to engage with our Commonwealth partners and seeking to expand the Commonwealth. But I am confident that there is a will on all sides to ensure that this bill succeeds. Thank you.
Minister Edward R.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. And it's a genuine pleasure to be here at the dispatch box today on behalf of my right honourable friend, the member for Sutton Coldfield. And it's a pleasure for various reasons. Partly because I suspect this will be one of the least challenging appearances for me at the box, because my right honourable friend, the member for Basingstoke, has quite rightly garnered so much support across this House and indeed in government for the measures she's bringing forward today. It's a pleasure to appear once again opposite the Shadow Minister, the Honourable Lady, the member for Cardiff North, who shadowed me in my role before she was moved to a different team, so it's very nice to be responding to her again. And it's also important, I think, that put on record, as my right honourable friend has done, our gratitude to her, to my honourable friend, the member for Bridgewater, for his work, to Stephen Twigg and his staff, to Mr Speaker, and indeed to the Honourable Lady, my honourable friend, the member for Castle Point, who, as always, as with this bill, as with many others, has done so much to ensure, as the whip, that this bill has progressed smoothly and is within, hopefully, touching distance of becoming law. Of course I'll give way.
I'll pay my own tribute to the Honourable Lady later in my own bill, but just on the point around private members' bills, this does actually show the House at its best in that this actually has been debated, I think, in a 10-minute rule bill, a private members' bill previously. This, I think, from the Honourable Lady, was a presentation bill, and actually just shows the importance of the work of the House on a sitting Friday to push through legislation like this to the other place, which is so important internationally to so many of our Commonwealth partners, as well as obviously the Red Cross.
To the honourable gentleman, he's absolutely right, and I often say when talking schools or more broadly in my constituency, I suspect he does in his, that if our electorate want to see the House at its best, watch it on a sitting Friday when we're debating private members' bills, when there is often a lot of cross-party cooperation, there is enlightening debate often on these bills, and one goes away not only having hopefully moved things forward and achieved something, but also having learnt something often in this chamber on a Friday. Before I turn to the substance of the bill, there's a couple of other points I'd make. Referring briefly to the suggestion, I think, made by my right honourable friend, the member for Basingstoke, and my honourable friend, the member for City of London and Westminster, about, I think it was the Canadian Parliament, possibly, she was referring to, with New Zealand Parliament, which gave the power to the Speaker or the Chair, that if a minister had not been deemed by the Chair to have given a sufficiently accurate or appropriate answer to a question, they could have the question re-put to the Minister. I gently say to my right honourable friend, of course, while it's an interesting suggestion, it would, of course, clearly be entirely redundant on this place, given ministers always answer directly the question posed to them as fully and helpfully as they can on every occasion, I'm sure. I'm also, the other reason why it's a genuine pleasure to be here is because this is a bill brought forward by my right honourable friend, the member for Basingstoke. The honourable gentleman, the member for Ogmore, suggested or highlighted that she had been forcefully pushing this issue to a conclusion. I have to say, having had the pleasure of working with her on various amendments to legislation in the past, I've always found it very wise to agree with my right honourable friend. So I'm very pleased to confirm the government's support for this. Not least, it's wise to agree with her, because normally and generally she's right in the point she's making, as I know from experience. So it is genuinely a real pleasure to speak on her own bill on this occasion. And I recognise in doing so her work as chair of the CPA, but also her work with the Westminster Foundation for Democracy and the huge value that adds. And of course, this is a hugely important bill, reflecting as it does on two very important organisations and what increasingly can appear to be a fractured and increasingly dangerous world. It's important that we remember and reinforce the role of democracy as a bulwark against authoritarianism, totalitarianism, and indeed often the conflicts that can flow from those. In respect of the CPA, I think it was my honourable friend, the member for Stoke-on-Trent South, who set out very clearly the importance of its work to promote parliamentary democracy and good government through a range of different activities and a range of different fora. It's open and wide-ranging in its promotion of democracy within the Commonwealth context. It's non-partisan, it's non-prescriptive. It does a huge amount of work to capture the best of parliamentary democracy across the Commonwealth, propagate it and reinforce it. And it's also important, as the Honourable Lady, the Shadow Minister, highlighted, to recognise the importance of the Commonwealth in that context. And she quite rightly highlighted its 75th anniversary. And it is an organisation, it's an institution of enduring success, enduring value, and I think we can genuinely characterise it as the Commonwealth family of nations, because I think we do view all other members of the Commonwealth, as I hope they would view us, as family. In respect of the ICRC, of course, this was founded 160 years ago as an impartial, neutral and independent organisation, I quote, whose exclusively humanitarian mission is to protect the lives and dignity of victims of armed conflict and other situations of violence and to provide them with assistance. That's from the ICRC mandate. Its unique international humanitarian mandate and mission has been, of course, formally recognised, again, as the Shadow Minister highlighted, by states in the Geneva Conventions and their additional protocols. And this organisation has unique legitimacy to engage all parties to conflicts and has unparalleled access to vulnerable groups in conflict situations. It's frequently the only agency operating at scale in many conflicts. And as we look around the world at the conflicts raging, its work has never been more important. So, it is a pleasure to confirm the government's full support for this legislation and to thank those members who've contributed today. As set out by my right honourable friend, the bill will enable the government to treat the CPA and the ICRC in a manner genuinely comparable to that of an international organisation of which the UK or His Majesty's government in the United Kingdom is a member. The UK has, as I've highlighted, a huge and long-standing partnership with the CPA and recognises the work it does. The UK also, as I've set out, views the ICRC as an essential partner for achieving our global humanitarian objectives, with the organisation having unique legitimacy to engage all parties to conflicts, unparalleled access, but also operating in some of the most challenging situations that anyone could face. Its specialised role engaging with all arms bearers, including the growing number of non-state armed groups, is coupled with its direct delivery of a comprehensive range of integrated humanitarian assistance and protection programmes. Treatment as an international organisation will allow both the CPA and the ICRC to deliver their objectives while operating in the UK. Now, in the case of the CPA, it will facilitate the organisation to operate fully across the Commonwealth and in international fora, including in areas where it is currently restricted by its charitable status. While it's not possible under the 1968 International Organisations Act, I think highlighted by my honourable friend, the member states of London and Westminster, to accord it the privileges and the status it needs, this legislation fills that gap. For the ICRC, treatment as an international organisation will critically enable it to operate in the UK in accordance with its international mandate, maintaining its strict adherence to the principles of neutrality, impartiality and independence, and its working method of confidentiality. Now, the ICRC's standard working method of confidentiality is designed to protect its staff and operations in active conflict zones. The public disclosure of information that the ICRC obtains from confidential dialogue with conflict parties is likely to put this at risk. It's also a principle that underpins its ability to operate in dangerous locations on sensitive issues, engaging with both state and non-state actors. Therefore, the bill has been amended to include a provision for the protection of certain information related to the ICRC's sensitive work, which they've provided in confidence to His Majesty's Government, from being used in court proceedings, except for criminal proceedings. The Government considers that this provision is both necessary but also proportionate. Now, treatment as an international organisation also includes the provision of privileges and immunities which are necessary to meet the functional needs of the CPA and the ICRC in the UK. In providing these privileges and immunities, we will strengthen our partnerships with both the CPA and the ICRC respectively, and enable these two key partners to better deliver their objectives. Now, the list of privileges and immunities which may be conferred on the CPA and ICRC has been informed by the International Organisations Act 1968. This will allow the Government to agree a framework which is unique and appropriate to each organisation's unique mandate. The actual suite of privileges and immunities to be accorded, including relevant exceptions and limitations, will be determined based on the functional need of each organisation and will be specified in secondary legislation and order in council. For example, the arrangements will make clear, as is standard practice, there will be no immunity from legal suit in the case, for example, of a motor traffic offence or damage caused by a motor vehicle. The financial implications of this bill are minimal, and there will be little or no loss of revenue as a result of the fiscal exemptions or reliefs, which will be granted, again, by delegated legislation through the provisions in the bill. As is standard practice for international organisations, refunds of certain taxes will be made in accordance with the separate arrangements between the Government and the CPA and ICRC, respectively. To a point my right honourable friend has highlighted, and I think the Shadow Minister very kindly gave me advance warning she was going to raise it later in her speech. I'm happy to reconfirm that the subsequent specific arrangements will be concluded and drawn up in active consultation with the CPA and with the ICRC respectively. I'll happily give way to my right honourable friend.
Right honourable friend, give way on that point. I realise, Madam Deputy Speaker, this is a third reading speech, so it's important not to go into the detail, but this was an element that was introduced at committee stage, and we didn't have the advantage of a report stage of the bill. So it's just to press the government on this particular point, because the privileges and immunities section of the bill is very clearly set out, that it's very important that those who are affected by the bill understand that those privileges and immunities are yet to be agreed upon with the government. It's really important that that is done well in advance of them being laid before Parliament, so that everybody can be cited on what they actually mean in practice.
Well, I'm grateful to my right honourable friend, who as ever is right, and therefore, subject to the passage of this legislation and prior to those regulations being brought forward, I would say from the box, both to reinforce her point that she's right, until they come into force, they don't come into force, but we will work very closely with those organisations so that when those regulations are laid and when those regulations are approved, there will hopefully be nothing in them that will be a surprise to them, because they will have worked collaboratively with us in drawing them up. And the arrangements, of course, will detail day-to-day management of the privileges and immunities granted to both organisations on a functional need basis and other facilities. Furthermore, administration of the arrangements will be resourced from the existing resources responsible and available for managing privileges and immunities with international organisations in the UK. This bill strengthens our commitment to the work of the Commonwealth and support of democratic legislatures through our work with the CPA. It will also support the FCDO's global humanitarian objectives, ensuring the UK remains at the heart of an unrivalled global network for economic, diplomatic and security partnerships through our work with the ICRC. There are a couple of points that have been raised by honourable members in the course of the debate, which I just want to turn to before concluding. I was very grateful to my honourable friend, the member for the Citizens of London and Westminster, for a wide-ranging, informative and typically well-informed contribution to today's debate. And gently, for about a minute, craving your indulgence, Madam Deputy Speaker, can I also take this opportunity, because I'm conscious that my honourable friend has announced she will not be seeking re-election at the next general election, and you never know whether you'll get another opportunity at the box in responding to the Honourable Lady, to put on record my gratitude to her for everything she's done. She and I served together as fellow ward councillors on Westminster City Council before I was elected to this place, with her then subsequently being elected. She is a fierce champion for what she believes to be right for her constituents and for her community, and she has demonstrated that both as a councillor, as leader of the council, and now as a member of Parliament. And I think she will be hugely missed by her constituents and also by this House. May I also, Madam Deputy Speaker, just respond to my honourable friend, the honourable member for Hyndburn, who raised some particular points. She asked about what support, beyond what we're doing with this legislation, what support His Majesty's Government in this place give to both the organisations that we are debating today. In respect to the ICRC, £48 million annually of core funding is given by His Majesty's Government to the ICRC, and up to £100 million of bilateral donations. We have long-standing and robust relationships with the ICRC and a track record of supporting them. In respect of the CPA, my understanding is that we fund CPA International to the tune of £196,000, and for CPA UK just over £200,000, £235,000. So our support for them is not only in our actions in this House with this legislation, in what we say, but also tangible in terms of that financial support. Madam Deputy Speaker, to conclude, in an ever more challenging global context, His Majesty's Government and my Right Honourable friend, the Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Secretary, remains committed to working with and supporting the work of the CPA and the ICRC. This bill gives both organisations the correct status in legislation that they need and that they deserve to allow them to continue their international operations without any impediment, reflecting that commitment. Once again, I congratulate my Right Honourable friend, the member for Basingstoke, express the Government's continued support for this legislation and commend the bill to the House.
With the leave of the House, I call Dame Maria Miller to wind up.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and can I thank the Minister for his comments, but also thank everybody who's taken part in the debate today. My honourable friend, the member for Hyndburn, the citizens of Westminster, Stoke-on-Trent South, Ogmore, a special call out for Ogmore, the treasurer of the CPA as well, and also for the opposition front bench for their fulsome support for this bill. And particularly, can I start by thanking the Minister for his for setting out so clearly how he will treat the secondary legislation that is required to make this bill work. Can I join him in also thanking my honourable friend, the member for Castlepoint, who I didn't thank earlier on, and we're never quite sure how we thank whips in this place, but thank you. I can thank my honourable friend very much for the incredible support that she has given to me, because she is so involved in all things to do with the FCDO. Thank everybody for the fulsome support of this House of Commons for both the ICRC and also the CPA to be recognised as international organisations. This bill helps both organisations to be able to do their jobs better. Even better. And can I thank the Minister and his colleagues at the FCDO for their unstinting support. And I hope to continue to see that unstinting support as the bill now passes to the other place.
The question is that the bill be now read the third time. As many as are of that opinion say aye. Aye. Contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.